This story comes from Karma. She will be tagged in this video. She said one of her biggest fears with sharing this story is that nobody will believe her because she knows how unbelievable all of this sounds, but it is a real thing that she and her family really experienced, and it's something that Karma, in fact, is actively still experiencing today. Karma's mom sadly passed away in 2022 due to some underlying health issues that were never on their radar. A couple years prior to her passing, though, her mom noticed an energy change in their home. They all noticed it, and they didn't know why or how it happened. It just kind of suddenly became a reality in their world, and they could not help take note of it. Karma said that oftentimes when they would walk through the home, it was just that heavy, oppressive, dark, molasses type of feel to the air around them, like everything is just weighed down and bogged down. One night, Karma is in her drag room. She's sewing a costume when suddenly her mom screams, this blood-curdling scream from her bedroom. She screams Karma's name, and so Karma responds, gets up, runs into her mom's bedroom. She's like, "What's wrong?" Her mom is visibly shaken, and she explains that she was sitting in bed and she saw this tall, dark shadow man exit the bathroom door and walk right past her bedroom door. Karma doesn't really know what to make of this. She tries just to, because they'd never seen or experienced anything like this before, calm her mom down. She's like, "You're probably just tired, try to get some rest." And so after a few minutes of reassuring her, Karma and her mom go back to doing what they were doing. About 20 minutes later, though, she again hears her mom scream, this like very panicked, guttural type of scream, and she gets up, runs back to her mom's bedroom. Her mom begins explaining that this time she saw this shadow man walk past the door again into the bathroom. As her mom is explaining this, Karma is standing in the doorway of the bedroom, and she suddenly feels the presence of somebody standing or walking behind her. Now, it's important to note that her dad was the only other person that lived in the house, and he was outside. They both knew he was outside, so it was not him. As Karma feels this presence behind her, she slowly turns her head, and down this dark hallway, she sees this shadow man just darting down the hallway full speed. Chills cover her entire body. She feels sick at her stomach. She cannot believe what she just saw. She walks into the mom's bedroom, closes the door, and stays in there with her mom for a few hours, trying to calm her down, trying to calm herself down, because they're both petrified. So a week goes by. It's almost enough time for them to put it out of their mind, forget about it. One night, Karma is getting ready for a show when she again hears her mom scream. Now this time when Karma gets up to run toward her mom, she remembers smelling this very putrid, horrible smell. She now knows that that could potentially be a sign of demonic activity. Regardless, she's running toward the room. When she gets there, her mom explains that this time she sees something crawl across the ceiling, and when it gets to the doorway of the bedroom, it tilted its head so it could look in the bedroom at her mom before continuing crawling across the ceiling toward the bathroom. This absolutely disturbed them both. And this continued happening for months. As the months went on, her mom seemed to get physically sicker. It was like whatever this was seemed to be feeding off of her, feeding off of her vulnerability or her energy, something. Then her mom started complaining that she was seeing tarantulas on her fan, in her room, and Karma didn't know what to make of this, but when her mom would see it, she'd get up, flip the lights on, and nothing would be there. So this continued until one night, Karma is in her mom's room with her. The lights are off. They're watching TV, and Karma sees something crawling across the cable box. She zones in with her eyes, and she sees a tarantula. Now, she is doing a double take, blinking, I cannot really be seeing what I am seeing, but she said that the little screen where the time is displayed on the cable box, the tarantula went to crawl over that, and you could actually see the highlighted words disappear. Something is physically there and it is blocking out the light that is coming from the cable box screen. So this, of course, weirds her out. She jumps up in a split second, flips the lights on, and nothing is there on the cable box. Now, again, just to reiterate, Karma knows how crazy this all sounds, but this is something that really happened to them. She can't explain it. And something that I also took note of, just the way that she told the story, is, when her mom first began having these experiences, Karma tried to pass it off like you're just tired, or like you just need some rest. And it's almost like whatever this energy was, since that Karma was like doubting or maybe not fully comprehending what was going on. And so it's like, all right, you don't believe, I'll show you too. So these experiences continued to happen. Her mom's health continued to decline, and eventually her mom was hospitalized. A month into her mom's hospital stay, she sadly passed away. Karma's dad passed away last year. And so now Karma and her brother are both living in that home by themselves. Karma is still having the same experiences. She's seeing the same things that her mom saw, and she does not know how to cope with it, so she is trying to ignore it, but she said it just seems to be getting worse. She actually very recently had a nightmare where some sort of creature, she said that the last thing she remembers this creature saying was, "You're next." And she woke up, and she doesn't know what to do. She has tried everything, and she feels like that this energy is now out to get her, or like trying to feed off of her, and she doesn't know if it is just attached to the house, if it is preying, something that like preys off of vulnerability or pain, and I do believe there are negative energies out there sometimes if we're already in like a vulnerable state of sorts that will like prey on that. That is something I've experienced myself. Although it was years ago, I know it's real. I know there are things out there that do that. And so that's the story. I've said this in other stories. There's just not closure there. It is an active and an ongoing thing for Karma. And I, just like I told her in DMs, sending her all of my light, my love, warmth, a cup of coffee, and a hug. If anybody has ever gone through something like this, if you have any advice for her in the comments, any encouragement or kindness to pass her way, I'm sure she would be appreciative. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you we'll be at 12,000 followers soon. Stay tuned for some more spooky stories.
They say she was barefoot when she vanished. That's how the story always started. The older kids at school would say it with a smirk, like they didn't believe it, but they'd never walk the tracks at night. Back in 1978, as the story goes, a girl named Miranda Vale disappeared on the old railway line that ran along the edge of town. No one remembers where she was going, just that she'd been seen walking home from the diner around dusk. The trains still ran back then. People swear they heard the sound of the train horn blaring, then a scream. That's the legend. Her body was never found. The story became a dare, a rite of passage for bored teenagers. Walk the line after dark, wait for the ghost train, see if Miranda finds you. I never thought much of it, just gossip. Until I got a camera for my birthday. I followed the tracks west. The sun was already low, bleeding through the tree line. Shadows looming long across the mess of broken train parts. That's where I found it. A half-collapsed boxcar. Sitting like a carcass, ribs split open, windows gone. I climbed inside. floor groaned under my boots. Leaves and broken glass crackled with every step. The walls were tagged with old graffiti, names, promises, prayers. I sat near the back and adjusted my lens, capturing the gloom, patterns of rot. Then I heard it. Low at first, like a murmur swallowed by the trees, but it rose, unmistakable. A train horn. Distant, but coming fast. I froze. There weren't supposed to be trains anymore. I scrambled toward the door, nearly dropping my camera. My foot caught on something. I tumbled out, skinning my palms in the gravel. No headlights, no thunder, no train. I lifted my camera and took one last shot of the boxcar before I got up and went home. She was in all of them. Further away in the first by the signal tower. Closer in the second. She was in the last one. Standing in the boxcar doorway. Barefoot. Looking down at me.
Sometimes when it feels that life is breaking you down, help will come to you in the most unexpected ways. The person who submitted this wants to be anonymous, so let's call her Maria. Maria was a single mom that had recently lost her job. With her losing her job, this meant that she lost her health insurance. She had a daughter that was about 5 years old that was extremely sick. No health insurance, sick child was not a good combination. For months, she tried everything she possibly could to get another job, but nobody would hire her. Nobody would call her back. She couldn't even get an interview. She got to a point where she literally wasn't even sure where they were going to get their next meal from. Her daughter just continued to get sicker and sicker because she wasn't getting the right amount of medication that she needed. One day, Maria reached her breaking point. She left her daughter with the neighbors and she went out on foot, looking for anyone that could possibly hire her, any help, calling friends, calling neighbors, trying to get a loan, like anything she possibly could to try to make some sort of money, but no one would help her. As she's about to have a complete mental breakdown, she gets to this playground area. There was a bench right in the front. She sits down at this bench and she just sits there and she cries and she prays and she just completely lets it all out. As she has her head down, she's crying uncontrollably. Somebody taps her shoulder. She looks up and she sees a little boy standing there. He couldn't be any older than 10 years old. He puts his hand out and hands her a $100 bill and tells her, "Here, you need this more than I do." Maria's confused because first off, there's this random little boy handing her a $100 bill. And second, how on earth could he have known all of her financial issues that she was going through? Before she even has a chance to say no, the little boy puts the money in her hand and walks away. And then he's just gone. The $100 bill was just enough to get her daughter to the hospital and to pay for the first dose of the medicine that her daughter needed. And it also covered dinner for that night. After her encounter with the little boy, Maria noticed that her luck completely changed. She started getting callbacks from jobs. People were willing to hire her. She actually ended up getting a really good job, to the point where she wasn't struggling anymore. Once she had enough money, she grabbed a $100 bill and went back to that park, hoping to run across that same little boy. She sat there for hours and never once did that little boy come anywhere near her. She even asked people in the area, "Hey, this little boy that looks like this came up to me, do you know where he is? Do you know where he lives?" No one knew. No one recognized this little boy. Till this day, she has never come across that little boy since. But till this day, she keeps a $100 bill in her wallet, hoping to pass on the blessing to whomever may need it.
This is really creepy. Last night in Long Beach, California, We had an elderly woman who had a strange encounter with something she can't explain. Now, I don't know exactly what it is, but it definitely is eerie. At around 9:55 p.m. last night, this woman at her home in Long Beach said she had let her dog outside into the backyard. Now, it was a small yard, it was a fenced-in area, and she had went inside to take a phone call. After the phone call was done, she said it was maybe 15 minutes or less, she goes back outside. She notices the dog is barking at something on the other side of this picket fence. So as she approaches it, she said she sees something standing on the other side. It is on all fours. She said it looked like a person that was kind of crawling around near the fence, and it was making some sort of hissing or clicking sound at the dog, and it was causing the dog to go crazy. So she gets closer to the dog and she says, "Come on, like, get inside now." And she said as it was alerted to her presence, this thing sort of took off. And she said as it took off, she could tell that it had these bright red colored glowing eyes. And she said, as far as she could tell, it ran off out into the neighbor's yard and then took off into the street. She did not see where it went, but she said she definitely felt like this was something not human, nor was it an animal. And she said it was about as big as a person, probably around 6 to 7 foot tall, and she couldn't make out any sort of identifiable characteristics, but she said it definitely did sort of look human.
This is giving goosebumps. It's called Camp Ashwood. A bus jolted down the dirt road, its headlights struggling against the fog. In the back, the teens laughed too loud. "Camp Ashwood, baby!" Rick whooped. Jenny sat quiet, staring out of the window. "We shouldn't be here," she said. Marcus smirked. "Don't tell me that you believe the ghost stories." Jenny's eyes didn't leave the trees. "They're not stories. My mom told me. The caretaker never left. He's still here." "Bet you $50 the place is haunted," laughed Rick, the loudmouthed jock. "Please," said Tina, rolling her eyes. "The only thing haunting this camp is your cologne." Ha! Everyone cracked up, even though the road grew darker and quieter. The bus driver barked a laugh, though it sounded more like a cough. "Don't joke about things you don't understand." The cabins reeked of mildew. The kids tried to laugh it off, though, the music thumping from the boombox. But then came the sound. From inside the wall. "Raccoon," Marcus said quickly. Jenny's voice was flat. "It's too slow." That was fingernails. The scratching stopped. A whisper seeped through the boards. "Who's in my house?" Everyone froze. Tina whispered, "Did you hear that?" Rick forced a laugh. So no, it's old wood. Cabins creak all the time." But the whisper came again, louder, urgent. "Get out before it burns again." Marcus lay with his head near the wall. He was almost asleep when he heard it. Breathing heavy, wet. Not his, not anyone in the cabin. He pressed his hand to the wall. Cold, damp, warm on the other side like someone's face pressed against his own. The breathing stopped, then the whisper into his ear. "Don't move." Marcus sat bolt upright, gasping. "What?" Tina mumbled from above. "Nothing," he lied. But he didn't sleep again that night. The next day, Jenny was gone. Her bed empty, sheets damp with lake water.
It's always a Jenny who goes missing.
It is. The kids panicked, searching everywhere. Marcus pressed his ear to the wall and then he froze. Jenny's voice, muffled, pleading. "Help me. He's in here. Please, get me out." She's in the wall. "Jenny!" Her voice came again, but lower, different. "He's in the walls. He never left." Rick smashed the plaster with a broom handle. The wall groaned, and then came a deeper voice. "You can't save her now." The sound of an axe dragging echoed through the walls. That night, the camp descended into chaos. The kids scattered into the woods, the mess hall, the ruined lodge, but the sounds followed, nails tapping just behind the boards, wet breathing everywhere, and one by one they vanished. A scream in the woods, a thud in the mess hall, silence where laughter used to be. By dawn, only Marcus remained. He staggered into the ruins of the lodge, his flashlight flickering, charred beams loomed overhead. "Jenny!" he called desperately. "Please!" From the shadows, she stepped forward. Clothes damp, eyes glassy, and she held an axe in her hands. Marcus's jaw dropped. "Oh, thank God." She raised the blade. "You don't get it," she said softly. "He was my father. This is his house, and now it's mine." Her lips curved into a smile as a whisper curled through the walls around them. Dozens of voices chanting, her father's loudest of all. "My blood, my house, my revenge!" Jenny leaned close, her voice barely human now, her father's ghost moving through her words. "I told you that he never left." And then the axe came down on Marcus's head. Camp Ashwood stands silent now. The cabins rot, the lodge blackened by fire, but if you press your ear to the walls, you'll hear Jenny laughing. Her voice tangled with her father's. The caretaker doesn't haunt the camp anymore. Now his daughter does. The end.
Let's read some scary stories that were DM'd to me. But first, you have to promise me something, okay? Promise me right now. When you're done watching this video, you're going to go over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and listen to the first episode of my new podcast. It's called Pretty Creepy. That's the title of my podcast. That's my podcast name, whatever. I don't know all the lingo yet, okay? I'm very new to this. I'm very nervous. Please give me honest feedback. If there's anything you want me to do episodes on, let me know. I'm going to be posting, I think, on Sundays and Thursdays. So go follow me on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast, whatever. And by the way, recording, editing, and uploading a podcast literally takes hours. That took me like 5 or 6 hours. So be really nice to your podcasters and like YouTubers and stuff like that, because it's so time consuming. It's not hard, okay, but it's time consuming and my back is killing me. I need to get rich on social media, get the hell out of this trailer, and have an actual house where I can like set up like a podcast filming YouTube area, because I'm gonna start YouTube soon too, so be on the lookout for that. Okay, anyways, let's get into these scary stories. When I was like 12-ish, I was watching TV in my mom's room. I was home alone and it was winter, so it got dark out really early. It was a new house as well, so the only TVs that were working were in my mom's room and the living room, and I didn't want to be downstairs alone, so I went upstairs to my mom's. In that time, I must have fell asleep for a bit, but I was waking up and running to the stairs and running down because I was scared, and every time I ran down the stairs, I flew back up in bed, and this happened like 4 times, and the 5th time I ran, I got to the stairs, and before going down, I saw a girl my height with black hair and a white dress. Her hair was covering her face, and then I flew back to bed and woke up again, like this horrible cycle I was trapped in. Luckily, after I saw the girl, I grabbed the blanket on the bed and ran down the stairs, and I didn't fly back up this time. I sat by the living room window waiting for my family to come back, and then a few years later, my mom saw a ghost peeking at her in her bedroom. So I told this person that I had a similar experience. I had, like, I don't know if I was dreaming or if I was actually awake, but I felt like it was so real that something was, like, dragging me out of bed, and I was trying to climb back into bed, and it, like, dragged me out of bed and, like, up the wall. It felt so real. I'm not sure if it was, like, a demon or a ghost or something, but I totally have gone through something similar, and that is terrifying. We lived in our great-grandparents' house when I was 7 years old. One night, I woke up out of a deep sleep to use the restroom. As soon as I entered the bathroom, I heard footsteps from the hallway, then saw a foot from the bottom of the door. As I opened the door, I looked both ways. Nobody was there. I closed the door, but ended up peeing myself. Then my mom comes in out of nowhere, claiming that my grandpa that had passed in the house years before woke her up and told her, "I scared Ladybug, and she peed herself and she needs a new pair of clothes," then handed me a new pair of clothes. So I feel like this story is like one of the sweet ones. Like it was her grandpa checking in on her, but it scared her so bad that she peed herself. But then the grandpa was like able to talk to her mom and tell her like she peed herself, you need to go take her some clothes. Still creepy because we never truly know who we're dealing with, but let's just say it was really her grandpa. This happened to me when I was maybe 9. I've moved since, but my old house used to have a corner shop filled with sweets, and I remember I was begging my mom to give me some money to go get candy. She was heading out to work anyways, so she gave me $5 and the key so I could get back in when she left. The second I left my house and crossed the road, a blacked out car with completely tinted windows blocked my path, and there was a woman in a shirt that said police, and a man was sitting next to her in the same shirt. She started speaking to me, asking me where I lived, if my mom was home, my name, and my age. It didn't fully click to me back then that this was suspicious, so I answered her, and she took a look over at my house before turning back to me and asking me to come closer, that she was hard of hearing. When I got closer, I could see into the back of the car, and I saw a rather large man right next to the back door on the side I was on. By then, I knew something was off, but I was pretty pinned. By some miracle, my mom came outside to start her walk to work seconds later, and the lady put her foot on the gas and drove away so fast. The road still has tire marks. I'm assuming she was trying to take me, but the arguable worst part is my mom recognized the car. And we lived 3 minutes from a park. Likely related, but a year later, a young girl went missing who lived near that same park. Yeah, they definitely almost got kidnapped. That is like my worst fear. Stranger danger. Don't talk to strangers, okay?
There is a man standing in that doorway. And I went back and looked at some of her other videos just to get a better feel for the space, because this video is very short. And I saw her walking through that door, and each time she did, this man would like step out of the way for her and like do this as if like to get out of her way. For some reason, he isn't stepping outside of the door. For some reason, he's staying there. He won't cross over that threshold. I don't know why. So curious if maybe she has something down there. Maybe she's done something or has had another medium come in, but he won't cross that threshold. Doesn't mean he won't cause problems, and it doesn't mean that dark energy doesn't seep up and isn't something that is felt. I feel like it's going to be felt in the chest, even in the lungs, a heaviness. I would be curious if when they moved in, if they noticed like something going on here. Something going on here that will show itself like as an allergy, like, and you may like write it off as an allergy, or if they acquired sleep apnea once they moved in. There's something going on with the breath and the lungs and the chest because of his heaviness that weighs down. He feels like he was a butcher. He feels like he was like a woodsman. Chopping wood for him was very therapeutic. Had a lot of suffering and loss in his life. And he lived to be super old. So by then he was bitter and angry and resentful. What's interesting is I don't even feel like he lived in this home. I feel like he belonged to the neighbor's home or just the neighboring land, but he's put himself here. And there's like an intention to why he put himself here. Like he's wanting to bother people. He's wanting to like be seen and like, can you see me? Does that scare you? Like he's really mean. Instigates fear and anger and that type of thing. Fortunately, when he was in body, people didn't want him around because he was all those things in body. And yes, like if we look back at his life, because there was so much loss, it's understandable that he was suffering so much. He lost his parents at a young age and then went on to lose his wife and his daughter. And then he lived a long time after that. So the other video I watched, she was picking up like pieces of wood and showing us like this random wood that's around there. if you're going to keep this man down there, don't move the wood. I know, sounds crazy, but he's connected to that stuff and like takes that as his, like, for some reason he feels like it's his possession, like his findings. He somehow feels aligned with those different pieces of wood. So if you're going to keep this man there, keep the wood there. A lot of ownership over this home, over this location, over, like I said, those pieces of wood. And so with all of that, it's not a vibe you want down there, and it's going to make you feel uncomfortable. Probably a lot of other energy that lives there. So if you got rid of him, you wouldn't necessarily get rid of the spooky vibe, which I know a lot of people like to keep, which is fine. But sometimes we take the spooky vibe a little too far, and some of these beings just need to go.
A lot of you are really loving the Glitch in the Matrix stories, and I got another one for you. So this woman named Andrea says that something really strange is happening around her town, and her family are the only ones who seem to notice. The first thing they started noticing were duplicates. They would see someone somewhere only for them to inexplicably turn up somewhere else. For example, her and her mother ran into an old friend at the grocery store, and they stood there chatting with them for a while. But later, when they got home that night, they saw on Facebook that that old friend was actually out of the country on vacation, and she had been for days. They even reached out to her, and she has no recollection of speaking to them at the grocery store. She also says that she's taken duplicate phone calls where she would take a call that had already happened with this person, and they have no recollection that that conversation already had happened. And then she says the scariest thing have been the deaths. She says there have been 4 deaths in their community of very well-known and influential people, and every one of them have died twice. First, they find out about their passing. They see all the rest in peace posts on Facebook. They even see the memorial fundraisers set up around the town. They see the cars at the church for the funeral. And then a week or 2 later, everything happens all over again. Social media posts about the passing, the fundraisers being set up by the community, cars in procession. And this has happened to 4 different people in the community. She reiterates, only she and her family are the ones who seem to notice that this is happening. Her and her mother, her siblings, and her 2 children. She says she has no idea what's going on, but it's starting to freak them out. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you have your own creepy story time, please submit it to the email in my bio.
JonBenet Ramsey's grandfather may have had connections to North Fox Island, a private island that later became the subject of a conspiracy theory rumored to be linked to a child trafficking ring. Except it wasn't just a rumor. The horrors people spoke of happening on this desolate island, which was supposed to be a nature camp for young boys, turned out to be completely true. I covered the story behind the island in part 1, so if you haven't seen that yet, be sure to go watch it because it's absolutely crazy and you will otherwise be completely lost. But this is the part 2 video, and if you enjoy content like this, make sure to follow. While the conspiracy surrounding North Fox Island turned out to be true, one rumor that can't be confirmed is whether or not JonBenet Ramsey's family had any involvement in the island's operations. Even though we can't confirm it, I'm gonna tell you what we do know for a fact, and you can decide how the pieces fit together for yourself. The Ramsey family was known to have a vacation home in Charlevoix, Michigan, which is just a stone's throw away from North Fox Island. JonBenet's paternal grandfather, Jay Ramsey, was also involved in aviation, specifically with the Michigan Aeronautics Commission during the 1970s. That's the same decade when North Fox Island was being used as a front for a child trafficking ring operating under the guise of a non-profit organization. If you don't remember or haven't watched part 1, the very first thing Frank Sheldon did after purchasing the island was built an airstrip so small planes could land and shuttle boys in and out. So it was during this same period of time that Jay Ramsey served as the director of the Michigan Aeronautics Commission, meaning that he was responsible for licensing and overseeing airstrips built throughout the state. He held that position for 22 years, and during that time, the number of licensed airports in Michigan grew from 130 to 322. Now, this doesn't prove any connection between him and North Fox Island, but it does suggest that the project most likely would have crossed his desk and that he was most likely the one that had to have approved Sheldon's airstrip on the island. We also know that Sheldon was a well-known figure in Charlevoix, the same area where the Ramsey family owned property. The story of North Fox Island broke in 1977, and Jay Ramsey retired just 2 years later in 1979. Those are the facts. Whether or not they point to John Bonet's family being involved with North Fox Island is purely speculative, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it in the comments, but what we do have more evidence for is that the island's operations have been linked to the Oakland County child killer, an unidentified serial killer who targeted children in the suburban areas just north of Detroit. I can dive deeper into that connection in part 3, or you can go check out my 2-part podcast episode on this topic by searching Oddities on Elm Street wherever you get your podcasts.
This is one of the darkest medical disasters in history. This is the origin story of the first electric device for women. A lot of people don't know how, laughably ridiculous the history is. Our story takes place during the 1800s in the Victorian era, and there was a plague amongst all of the Victorian women that doctors called hysteria. What was the cause, you ask? The cause of hysteria was thought to be a woman's womb. It comes from the Greek word hystera, meaning uterus. Hysteria is also referred to as the wandering womb disease because doctors believed the womb was a rogue organ that could wander around the body, bumping into things and causing all kinds of chaos. Symptoms include anxiety, irritability, scoliosis, and having opinions. But it was basically a blanket medical term for women who behaved in a way that was deemed unacceptable by society. And this was considered a legitimate medical condition until the 1950s. So how was hysteria treated? Now this is where the story gets really good. There are a few treatments for hysteria, including getting married, having babies, being institutionalized, but standard practice and a very popular treatment option was manual stimulation by the doctor until the woman reached relief. The idea was that it would calm the womb down and return it to its rightful place in the body. I'm not joking. Look all of this up. It's real. So the demand for this treatment was so high because there were so many hysterical women that the men were having a hard time keeping up because their hands were literally starting to cramp up. So, in true Industrial Revolution spirit, someone invented a machine to make the process faster and easier for the doctors. And just like that, the first electromechanical device for women was born. So what started as a medical treatment was a total accident that women happened to enjoy it, because that was not the intent. And fast forward to now, it's actually considered a form of self-care. It's also a reminder that learning what feels safe, what feels good, is kind of a quiet rebellion against centuries of medical misinformation. In the spirit of that, I want to empower each and every one of you to connect more with yourself. That's why I'm partnering with Bellessa for this video. Bellessa's really reclaims that story, and they don't label women's needs as symptoms, they celebrate them. So everyone who signs up either gets a free toy or a free gift card. You just have to go to the link in my bio and claim your free gift. Because it turns out that knowledge of your own body really is power.
An 18-year-old boy goes on a walk in the forest near his home, only to vanish into thin air. His disappearance would remain a mystery until 7 years later, when his mummified body would be found crammed inside the chimney of an abandoned cabin less than a mile from his home. His body in the chimney was crammed in a fetal position with his legs above his head, and they'd been disjointed from his torso. He was naked from the waist down, only wearing a thin shirt. During the investigation, authorities found the rest of his clothing folded neatly inside the cabin by the fireplace, which is odd. There weren't really any signs of trauma to his body or any signs of a struggle, but to this day, no one can figure out how he got into the chimney or why he wasn't found sooner, as he was so close to his house the entire time. This is the mysterious death of Joshua Maddox, and it's one that I find myself thinking about a lot simply because nothing about it makes sense. So let's talk about it. This is Joshua Maddox. He was only 18 years old when he suddenly and very mysteriously disappeared on May 8th, 2008. That day, Joshua decided that it was the perfect day to get out of the house and go for a walk. He lived with his dad and 2 sisters in Woodland Park, Colorado, which is surrounded by the Pike National Forest. And because it's a small tucked away mountain town surrounded by lush, untouched wilderness, it's the perfect place to go hiking, which is usually what Joshua spent his free time doing, outside of writing music and playing guitar, especially since the recent death of his older brother Zachary. Just 2 years prior, Zachary took his own life, which devastated Joshua and his entire family. Losing his brother took a big toll on him, so ever since then, he spent his time hiking and just being outdoors. So that day when he told his sister that he was going on a walk, it really wasn't anything out of the ordinary for him, and she didn't even think twice about it. But Joshua never came home that night, and he was never seen alive again. When he didn't come home, Joshua's dad Mike wasn't initially too worried about it because Joshua was freshly 18 and he spent a lot of time outdoors, so he thought that he was probably just with friends. But when the 5th day came and went and Joshua had still not returned home, Mike officially reported his son missing to the police. A massive search was launched, but no trace of Joshua was found anywhere. It was like he vanished into thin air. Police listed him as a missing person, but they didn't suspect foul play. And in all regards, they didn't really take this case too seriously. Months went by with no answers, and his family hoped that he just walked away to start a new life, maybe playing music on tour somewhere. His sister expected him for the longest time to one day just randomly show back up to their father's home with a wife and children so that they could meet their grandparents. But unfortunately, that would never happen because 7 years later, on August 7th, 2015, Joshua's body would be found. It was early in the morning when a property developer named Chuck Murphy made a grim discovery. Chuck was demolishing his old wood cabin, which sat on a large plot of land on Meadowlark Lane in Woodland Park. The cabin was completely surrounded by tall pine trees and sat about 50 feet off the road, so it was really isolated. It had also sat untouched for nearly a decade and was abandoned. The inside was falling apart and the majority of it was rotting, so Chuck decided to bring in a team and demolish it to make way for 32 new homes to sit in its place. That morning, when Chuck entered his cabin, he noticed a foul odor, but he didn't think much of it. But then it came time to demolish the chimney, and what the demolition team discovered was something straight out of a nightmare. There in the chimney was a mummified body. So Chuck called the police, who, with the help of dental records, confirmed that the body belonged to 18-year-old Joshua Maddox, who disappeared 7 years prior. The most devastating part is that the cabin sat only 2 blocks away from where Joshua lived when he went missing. It was just so isolated that it was never thought to be searched. There were no nearby neighbors, and Chuck rarely visited the cabin. So all of this together confirms the fact that no one would have heard Joshua screaming for help. But the position of his body and the circumstances around it only posed more questions. Joshua's body in the chimney was crammed in the fetal position with his legs above his head. And like I mentioned, they had been disjointed from his torso. He was naked from the waist down and only wearing a thin shirt. During the investigation, authorities found the rest of his clothing folded neatly inside the cabin by the fireplace. And according to the autopsy and toxicology report, no alcohol or drugs were found in Joshua's system, and he had no outward signs of trauma. So he didn't have any broken bones, no gun or stab wounds, just absolutely nothing. The medical examiner stated that it wasn't an instant death. He didn't starve to death, so this raised the question of how exactly Joshua died. The only 2 possibilities that authorities could come up with was either dehydration or hypothermia, and on September 28, 2015, authorities officially ruled Joshua's death as accidental. They believed that he climbed into the chimney voluntarily and accidentally got stuck, resulting in his death. According to authorities, Joshua most likely died from hypothermia as the temperatures around the time he disappeared dropped into the mid-30s. But with this ruling, many people questioned if Joshua's death was truly accidental. With many discrepancies in the autopsy and details that didn't seem to add up, it caused many people, including the cabin's owner Chuck, to want Josh's case to be further investigated. The position that Joshua's body was in inside the chimney indicated that he went in head first, which is incredibly unusual if you're trying to climb down a chimney. And the coroner noted that it likely would have taken the force of 2 people to get Joshua in that position that he was found in. Furthermore, his clothing was found inside the cabin, folded neatly by the fireplace. So why did he undress, climb back on the roof, and then try to go head first down the chimney? It just doesn't make sense. Adding to this, Chuck stated that when the chimney was built decades ago, he secured a thick wire mesh on the top of the chimney that was held together with steel hooks. This helped to prevent debris and wildlife from entering the cabin or clogging up the chimney. At the time Joshua was found, this wire mesh, which was incredibly heavy and rusted, was missing. And although it could have been collected by the demolition team without anyone realizing, the top of the chimney was still rusted and pointy, so it doesn't make sense why Joshua would try and go down voluntarily with his private area exposed. It would be incredibly painful. Chuck also noted that a large wooden breakfast bar had been torn from a wall in the kitchen and is pushed up against the chimney, blocking it from the inside. This wasn't done by him or the demolition team, so who did it and Why? And if Joshua already had access to the inside of the cabin, he would have seen that and known that he wouldn't be able to get in from going down the chimney. 3 days after the coroner's initial findings and with pressure from the public, he reopened Joshua's case for a second look, but this provided nothing new to the case. Except this time, the investigation listed Joshua's death as accidental, murder, or undetermined causes. But still, for a lot of people, with all of the evidence provided, one big question remained. Was Joshua forced into the chimney, or did he climb down on his own? Over the years, police have received a large amount of tips in relation to Joshua's case, including the name of a potential suspect that outwardly bragged about killing Joshua. That person is Andrew Richard Newman, and the anonymous tip stated that Andrew was the last person to be seen with Joshua before he disappeared. Andrew, at the time the tip was received, was already serving time in a Texas jail, but he had and still has an extensive violent criminal history. Andrew reportedly bragged about putting Joshua into a hole. Then a Reddit post surfaced, and the user claimed to have known both Andrew and Joshua. The user stated that Andrew and Joshua started hanging out together, and then one day, Joshua just magically disappeared. After Joshua went missing, Andrew traveled to New Mexico and befriended a caretaker of a person with health challenges. One day, the caretaker invited Andrew over before hopping in the shower, but when he got out, he found his patient dead. He had been stabbed to death, and Andrew was nowhere to be found. He was eventually arrested and claimed to have killed a woman in Taos, having stuffed her body in a barrel. Police did find the barrel in question and found a woman's remains inside, but they already had someone else in custody for that crime, so they dismissed Andrew's confession, and nothing came of it. Over the years, a lot of people, including that Reddit user, reported Andrew's name to the police and begged them to investigate him in the suspicious death of Joshua Maddox. However, it was never taken seriously, and to this day, Andrew has never been charged in connection to Joshua's disappearance or death. Andrew spent time in prison for that initial murder, but he was released not long after. He was then arrested again in December of 2019 for burglary, and while he was in the Brazos County Jail, he assaulted 3 police officers. But despite his lengthy and violent criminal history, Andrew was released on June 23rd of 2022, according to the Brazos County Jail Inmate Search. So many questions remain in this case, like why was Joshua at the cabin that day, or if he was even alone? How did he end up nude from the waist down, and how did the rest of his clothes end up inside the cabin? Was he forced into the chimney? Who blocked the fireplace from the inside with that wooden breakfast bar? And why was Andrew, a known killer, never questioned, even though he was the last person to be seen with Joshua? I don't know if we will ever have answers to those questions, but one thing remains clear to a lot of people. Whatever happened to Joshua was no accident. Whenever someone asks me what true crime case keeps me up at night, I always find myself thinking of this one. Whatever it was that happened to Joshua that summer day is extremely tragic and haunting, and I just can't imagine what his final moments must have been like. It's so sad to think that the entire 7 years that he was missing, he was so close to home. But it's now been 17 years, and whatever happened to Joshua that day inside the chimney remains a mystery.
The Phoenix Lights was probably the creepiest thing to happen to Arizona. In March 13th, 1997, there was a triangular-shaped craft that was seen from Las Vegas to Phoenix all the way down to Tucson. And millions of people witnessed this event unfold right over the city of Phoenix, including myself. Now, I remember like it was yesterday. I was with my uncle. We were driving downtown, and we started to notice that cars were pulling off the road. And not only that, people were getting out of their vehicles and they were looking up at the sky. So we pull over, and that's when we noticed these lights up in the sky. It was a strange series of probably about 12 to 14 lights in a V-shaped formation hovering over the city of Phoenix. So my uncle and I, we drive up to South Mountain Park, and we parked at this lookoff point where you could see the entire city of Phoenix. You could see these lights perfectly, and you could tell that it was part of some large triangular craft, and it just hovered over Phoenix for about an hour. Now, as we were watching this thing, there were several other cars parked next to us, and I remember them having their radios on, and everybody on the news was talking about these lights. And as we watched these lights, you could hear the radio cutting in and out as if something were disrupting its frequency. And it was very, very odd to see this, and then the next day for them to come out and say it was nothing but flares. Because myself and others included witnessed that thing and saw that it was some sort of large triangular craft.
Man has a Bermuda Triangle that no one talks about, and the last time scientists went to go investigate, they never came back. Yeah, let's talk about it, because I told y'all that the Bermuda Triangle has nothing on the Alaskan Triangle, because the Alaskan Triangle, there has been over 16,000 people that have disappeared and nobody's talking about it, while the Bermuda Triangle only has 1,000 people that disappeared. Now I'm finding out that there is a Japanese triangle between Japan, Guam, and the Philippines, where there have been multiple anomalies cited. Apparently compasses don't work there, so a lot of people feel like time stops in that triangle. And there have also been sightings of a giant sea serpent, to the point where the Japanese people literally say that there are sea spirits in that triangle. I want to tell you guys about something that happened in the 1950s. Japan sent out a research vessel called Kaiomaru No. 5 to go ahead and investigate everything going on in that triangle, because people had been so scared of it. They're like, let's just get a hold of this. Let's just see what's really out there. Y'all, as soon as they pass the threshold into that triangle, the entire ship and the entire crew gone. Why is nobody talking about like these disappearances? The fact that things just be vanishing into the sea. It was so bad that the Japanese government said never again, and then they labeled that part of the sea Mono Umi, which means sea of the devil. Like, yo, this is some real stuff. Like, you can literally fact check this. You can Google this. They were gone. All of the crew gone. No bodies. No signs of distress. No ship even. Just gone. They didn't even see them on the radar. It was like, poof, vanished. This type of stuff will like keep me up at night, because I'm like, the ocean is so terrifying, because I feel like anything can happen, literally anything. Then I started diving into the Great Lakes, and apparently the Great Lakes also have their things where there people be hearing voices and seeing ghost ships in the fog. Like, what is this, Pirates of the Caribbean? Y'all, it's absolutely crazy. So y'all wanted me to keep talking about it, so don't be mad at me when you have nightmares. Anyway, as always, make sure you like and follow, and let me know if you guys want me to keep this series going.
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
I just got off from work and I got energy still, so let's do another story time. So we're going to talk about the Irico Theater, which is now called the James Neeler Theater. Back when it was the Irico Theater, it burned down. It was real bad. 600 people, well, actually over 600 people lost their lives. Because there were so many lives that was lost, it's a whole bunch of displaced spirits. And a lot of them are mad as hell. For those of you who don't know, when you're in a space where there's a whole lot of energy built up, you can harness that energy for good or bad. There was a clan of witches, vampires, warlocks, and what do you call it? Golems. They were the ones who put the funding behind the whole Irico Theater being built in the first place. So after the fire happened, all 4 of the heads of those clans came together, and they were like, okay, look, we're gonna have to do something about this place. We gotta release all these spirits, but we can't do it at one time because it's gonna be an implosion of energy, and we're not trying to lose the building. This is where the warlock got the bright idea to be greedy as fuck. Most warlocks use dark magic in order to get whatever the fuck they want in life. So if you got a whole bunch of spirits around you that's just raw energy, you can harness that and use that energy for whatever it is that you want to put it to. The warlock needed the energy for a money spell. The vampire, the witches, and the golems had no idea that the warlock went off on his own tangent. Until one day, the golem wound up going downstairs where the energy was the strongest and saw the warlock actually harvesting that energy. The way that it was explained to me, when the golem went down there and he seen the warlock taking the energy, like the golem saw the warlock standing there inside of a pentagram circle with a whole bunch of inscriptions in the pentagram, and a ball of light like an orb would appear. And the brighter the orb gets, the bigger it gets, and it turns into a full body apparition. The warlock has to ask, what's your name and what is your purpose? If the spirit has no idea what their purpose is, the warlock then tricks them into thinking they're there for him and they have to give him their life energy. The golem saw it, turned on his heels, knees to chest, ran to the witch. The witch like, oh no, he got us fucked up, and went over to the vampire. Now the witch, the vampire, and the golem is all talking about how they gonna get rid of the warlock, but they really don't know how to do it because they don't know how strong he is at this point. And see, that right there, that was the part that they really had to worry about, because they had no idea how strong the warlock really was. He hears everything that the witch, vampire, and golem is saying about him, even though he's not in the vicinity of them. So the warlock, homeboy, decide, oh, y'all think that you finna stop me? I'ma stop you first. The first person that the warlock decides to take out is the golem. The reason why it's the golem is because a golem basically is a puppet that's being used by somebody else. It doesn't have a brain for it to really think on its own, and it necessarily doesn't have a spirit because it's actually being driven by whoever created the golem. Their spirit, or a part of their spirit, is in. The warlock knew that the golem was actually being controlled by a super powerful wizard. Yes, wizards and warlocks are different. Because of who the wizard was, the warlock was like, yeah, no. You got to go first, because if you send out this radar to this wizard and I got to fight this motherfucker too, or it's really going to be a problem. So, boom. The vampire, the witch, and the golem, they made their plan. They getting into their positions. But here's the thing. The golem was the one that was the farthest away from the vampire and the witch. So the warlock took the golem out. Without the golem knowing it, he was actually standing on a rug with a pentagram underneath it. And the warlock was able to transform the golem back into clay. Now, when the warlock got rid of the golem, the warlock now knows everything that the golem knows. Because of this newfound information, the warlock is now sitting on his high horse. Honey Boo Boo then came out the back, strolled across the stage nice and slow, came down the orchestra pit, and is walking up the main act. He stops halfway through. The witch and the vampire is sitting up top in one of the booths. They waiting for the warlock to come through this one little path that they made. Instead of putting the pentagram seals on the floor, they actually put them on the sides of the chairs in the rows, so that it actually made a cube of protection where the warlock would have been stuck in. But he stopped a few inches away from where the ward began. The vampire and the witch sitting up top like, why the fuck he just stopped? What's happening? The witch say, oh God, he knows. You gotta do it. The vampire turning around and is like, no, I can't do this. If I bite you, I'm gonna be in trouble. She say, don't worry about it. I got that covered. I need you to bite me now. When vampires partake in supernatural blood, all of their abilities get bumped up tenfold. As the vampire is feeding off of the witch, she is putting all of her intent into her blood so that he siphons off of her intent and is boosted up even higher. The warlock look up at them, cock his head, and in one leap, jumped up to that box. Now the warlock and the vampire going blow for blow. The witch on the floor, she messed up. Her energy is spent because she just gave most of it to the vampire, but she's sitting down there and she's doing mantras. And while she's doing her mantras, she's also calling her cousin. The vampire is giving the warlock some go. Almost to the point where the vampire was actually winning. Until the warlock was like, yeah, you got me fucked up. I'm not finna fight you like that. Goes into his pocket, pulls out a red orb, smashing on the ground. When he's smashing on the ground, the red dust or smoke comes up. He breathes it in. He just took on another soul. Now he's healed from whatever the fuck the vampire just did to him, and he ready for round. The vampire, done for, spent, tired. Don't know if he could actually keep up with the world. The witch is army crawling out of the booth, down the hall. She's trying her best to get to where her bag is. She got some special shit in her bag, okay? Just as she gets to the bag, she feel the energy force field around her lift her up off the floor. As she's in the air, it's crushing her. She coughing up blood, but she's still sending out the mantra. And then the cavalry busts through the door. Witches come tumbling into the theater. Wands ready. They take off to where their witchy friend is. They see the warlock first. Every last one of the coven members put all of their energy and intent into trapping him and binding. By this time, the witch that he was originally fighting is literally fighting for her life. She looks at her coven sisters and say, use my life to end him. They crying, oh my God, no, we can't do this. Who gonna lead the covenant? She like, the predecessor is already in place. Get rid of the warlock. He has to go. 4 of the coven members, they stand around the witch lady and they saying their little mantras. The witch lady, her spirit lifts up out of her body. She's standing there. The 4 witches don't stop their mantra. The main witch is getting so much energy from the 4 witches that she's almost like a clone of her original self. No more Miss Ghost Lady. As her powers finally get to the height that it needs to be at, it looked like a yellow jewel just appeared where her third eye would be. That same jewel appeared on the warlock's head. For whatever reason why, he didn't feel what was going on to him. Now, it's 3 witches that's currently fighting the warlock. They done pinned him to the floor. Miss Ghost Witch walks up to the warlock, looks at him, and literally lays into his body. The warlock thrashing, screaming, oh my God, no, don't do this. And the next thing you know, he turned into fucking dust. Now the witches, they on a whole nother mission because they know now that the warlock is gone, all of the energy that he just displaced is going to turn evil as fuck. Little did they know, in a little bit of time that they was in there supposedly cleaning out the theater, the warlock had already gained 150 spirits. The only way that they could stop an implosion of energy, which will literally take down a building, is if they sacrifice themselves. The 3 that was fighting off the warlock nominated themselves to be sacrificed. The coven gets to chanting, may this holy blood spill, heal, over and over and over again until every spirit was set free. After a couple of more rounds of purification, because some of them spirits was evil as hell and still lingering around, yeah, they decided now that it's clean, it can open up again. And that's when it was renamed the James Neeler Theater from the Irico Theater.
A Georgia family was terrorized by something evil, and they caught it on camera. When you think of evil demonic entities, you often think of something with horns and a tail chasing you with a pitchfork. But the reality of it is, they don't come chasing you with a pitchfork. They come looking like someone you would invite in for dinner. They might look like a man, woman, or child. They often appear to be friendly, or they want to help you, or they're just there for good. They were lost and caught in the cracks of time. But I'm going to show you one way that they sometimes appear. Something totally innocent, but behind the initial look, there's something evil. As you can see in this picture, there's an entity sitting on the couch. Just to the left, there is a man with 2 small children on his knees. They were posing for a family photo, and this thing appeared. They didn't want the children in the picture, so I left them out. However, this family had been terrorized for months. They moved into this new home. It was a very old home just north of Atlanta. And from the moment they moved in, they became terrorized. The mother was tormented when she was home alone. The whole family succumbed to bruises, kicks, scratches, cuts, and all kinds of physical attack. Let me know in the comments what you think. Have a great day. God bless.
Testing again. I don't know what is happening, but everything is charged up. Everything is like sound off on here. I don't know, but this is now my 4th attempt at reading this story and making sure that TikTok actually records the sound. I feel like this is like a haunted story. I really hope that this ghost doesn't come for me. The house we lived in on Del Monte Avenue was so haunted. Goose, excuse you, sir. Actually, 2 houses on Del Monte. The first one has been demolished and an apartment complex was built on the land. I am the oldest of 4. At the time, I was about 5 years old. Brothers were 4 and 3, and my sister was 2. We were all playing in the backyard, and my mom walked out the back door, down the driveway, and went across the alley. Yes, there was an alley back then. She walked next door, and she said she'll be right back. Now, my mom is 4'11", brown Mexican woman. A little later, we saw a tall blonde bride walk up the driveway, and she turned her head left towards us and said to us, "No se vayan a lastimar mi hijos." We all said, "Okay, mommy."
She walked right into our screened porch and into our laundry room, which only had one way in and one way out. And we kept playing as if nothing unusual happened. Then our real mom walked up the driveway. We stopped and looked at each other and realized at the same time that blonde bride was not our mom. We all ran to tell her and filled her into the laundry room, and no one was there. The scary part was this happened during the day. Hope this wasn't too long. I always love long stories, and I'm hoping so bad that this fourth attempt recorded this. Also, I don't speak Spanish, but I kind of think that means I don't want to hurt my children, or I can't hurt my children. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, or if you have a similar story, send it my way.